Okay, and we should be live again, hopefully. Hey again to everyone that's joining us from the previous talk, and hi to all the people that have joined us just specifically for this talk. Hope you're all having a good chilly afternoon. We've got a really interesting talk up next, actually by Rece, who is one of our computer games program students in their final year. And they're going to be basically talking about their time in the industry as an intern. So hopefully everyone enjoys this. And I'm going to pass straight over to Rece to lead the show.
Good afternoon, people. I advertise myself as Black Rece because I try to get a sense of to stamp my approval, to stamp my presence on things. So please excuse my name. But yeah, this is Geeks, Nerds, and Weebs because end of the day, we all love computers, and you'll find a lot of them in industry, obviously. So the company that I worked at is called Code Weavers. Company based in Stafford. They make basically tools, web applications to help sell cars and sell them better. It's roughly about 12 years old, started up from the guy's garage. And, the name itself sounds great. Code Weavers sounds like Code Masters, and the people there were great. But they did business applications rather than games applications. So the first hurdle, if you will, that I had to account for was the fact that it wasn't games which I ideally wanted. But then thinking about it, the only real difference between a computer game and a business application is in the way that it's presented. So, end of the day, you're still going to be doing code, you're still going to be doing calculations, you will still use some kind of interface or graphics to display information. It's just depends on the audience you're targeting and what you provide. So I see them as basically the same. But Code Weavers was a great company. The interview process was pretty much your typical interview. Granted, it was online because of the COVID pandemic hit us, which actually did me a little bit of a favor. But I'll come back to that in a moment. The interview was with two of their representatives and one of their HR representatives, two from the development branch, one from the HR. They were all really, really friendly, really good to talk to. It was even good to be able to talk to them about some of the things that got them into programming. One of the developers that I spoke to was called Blaze, and he started in a similar vein to where I started way back in the day on a Spectrum 48K computer, coding in BASIC. And it's good to be able to talk to your interviewers as if it's a conversation, because at the end of the day, they're trying to find out about you, and you should be trying to find out about them and their company. So if you can get it into a relaxed conversation about the work, that will do you great dividends. But yeah, him working on a Spectrum 48K was absolutely great. It's nice to find out that somebody who's got to their position from the same beginnings as yourself. So it helped with me. But yeah, in the interview it was pretty pretty standard in the fact that they described the role, described themselves, described the company, and in which asked me questions about where I came from, what I've been doing, projects I've been doing. Pretty standard across most interviews, but in a relaxed, no one's in a suit or tie. Plus, because this is COVID, it's in our own home, so it was a more relaxed atmosphere. There was a review of the coding tests, which was a C# project that they put together, and I was kind of like the guinea pig for it because I hadn't really given it to many people. So it's trying to get feedback on how the test went. But unfortunately for them, they gave me a version where they thought they had explained their rules properly, but I had interpreted it that they wanted me to do something that required something over and above what they wanted, which came up as a talking point, which they were appreciative of the effort and of the skill and knowledge that I put into doing it. Although secretly I had never done anything like that before and had to go do some good old Google foo and Stack Overflow to find out exactly what I was doing and how to get it done. But you will get tests. Go practice if you want to practice. But at the end of the day, it's to find out what you know at your current level. So take that as you will. What I learned from the actual interview was about the company and about the people and about their atmosphere and dealing with how they address issues and how they try and work as a community, which was interesting because I'd never been in a company like Code Weavers before, or games for that matter. So it was interesting. If I was going to do anything differently, ask about the test, ask more questions about the test, and make sure I know about the test. But speak as you find. Oh, and if ever you get the chance to, when you apply to an interview with a company and you do it online again, get a background of the company. For example, when I had an interview with Playground Games, I had the background of Fable on the online interview. A few brownie points might get you a few extra things, gives you a talking point. They seem to appreciate it, so my tip. As for preparations for the interview, any chance you can get to practice an interview, to do a mock interview, take it. Staff University had a couple. I took them up on those. And I've been to other previous jobs, previous interviews, took part in them, made like a mental note of the feedback I've got from those and tried to incorporate those in future interviews. At Code Weavers, there was a lot of back-end. Well, I was a C# developer for Code Weavers. So there was a lot of back-end work and integrations of services and APIs. So getting PayPal to work on their shop front. Because Code Weavers deal with web applications that predominantly sell vehicles to customers, one of the tools that they wanted to incorporate was the ability to use PayPal to pay for reservations of a car that's either on purchase or a deposit and so on. So I incorporated PayPal into one of their systems, into a Volvo system, so that they can then make payments via PayPal as well as their other payment methods that they had, and then of course allocate those funds to the vehicle that they wanted. Also, another service that they had was to be able to offer finance deals. So, for example, if you have a look at Auto Trader website, you will get a example of what a vehicle will cost if you bought it on finance. But of course, Code Weaver do not actually do those calculations. They go to a finance company such as Oodle to have those calculations done for them and for the loan agreement to be underwritten and passed on to the customer. So of course I integrated Oodle in particular with the platform for customers to use to purchase cars. And then another project that I worked on was Service Monitor, because as you can imagine, a platform such as Code Weavers that deal with so many different services, APIs from across the board, you need to kind of keep an idea. No, it's helpful to have an idea of which services are online and which ones aren't. Because as you can imagine, you're going to get service tickets, support tickets come through to you saying that this service doesn't work, which kind of looks bad. But if you've got a service monitor up and running saying, well, this service isn't running because their servers are down, or this service isn't running because of some other reason, you can then have a monitor for your clients so that they can see who's running, who's not, what issues may be, what support tickets may be coming through, and the right ways to dealing with them. And it also reduces the workload on code weavers, because there's no point in code weavers looking into how to fix company X's services if they're down, because it's not inside code weavers. Code weavers had no control over third-party services apart from connecting to them, and that's it. So the service monitor was really, really helpful. What I learned so much. My year in with them was so long, and I kind of wish I could go back. But placement is only 12 months. The people there were great. One of the things I liked their sense of community, to the point where they had a kind of unwritten motto of, for every company event you attend, all attendees must beat the previous year's bar tab. I think we reached something like 3,500 on a bar tab for one event, which was, kind of fun. But then this is the reason why I named the presentation Geeks, Nerds, and Weebs, because I think I'm a bit of a geek, a bit of a nerd, maybe a bit of a weeb. But then I went into this company thinking, okay, these are professionals that have been doing it for years, but they're still weirdos and geeks and nerds. And I fitted in really, really well. So I really, really enjoyed myself. C'est la vie. But yeah. So learning about the community was really helpful, and being able to talk to people on a level, and even going through, on a day-to-day basis, you would have a stand-up to say, to say what problems you had in the previous day, what your task is going to be for the next day, and any problems you had. And then at the end of the week, you'd have a roundup of how your week went, which, it's a general agile type project management workflow, which is fine. It's funny when you get a group of people that you all kind of vibe with, and they're all putting memes onto a presentation to signify the problems that they had in the week. So I'd like to show you some memes, but I'm probably best I didn't. What I will say, though, is regarding programmers versus developers, learn your design patterns. The more you know, the easier it is to communicate. Yes, it will help you with your code. That's fine. That's all fair and good. But it also helps you communicate problems or solutions. Because if you were able to say, oh, this solution requires a builder, or this solution requires some other design pattern, that developer you're speaking to automatically has an idea of what you're talking about just by you saying the name of the design pattern, which cuts out having to explain what the design pattern is. It saves so much time and allows you to communicate so much more effectively, that there is more than just the value of solving a problem. So learn your design pattern. And then it's always good to bear in mind that I was a back-end developer, not a back-end programmer. The reason for the distinction is because a programmer just codes, is given instructions and just codes, whereas developer develops a solution, finds the problem, works out, does research on the problem, and then develops a solution and iterates on that solution until they come up with I say finished product, but end of the day, code is changeable. Code can be thrown away at an instant. So it's finished for now, but be prepared to revisit your code. So programmers versus developers, there's a distinction that you should be aware of. Another thing with like the code inside of working at Codeweavers was their distinct lack of documentation. The majority of all of the documentation was in the wiki describing what their services were and how to use them. It was kept up to date on a regular basis, but that was all the documentation. I kind of had to unlearn the fact of the trait of putting comments into my code. But then it kind of made sense. You should be able to read your code, and you should be able to pass your code onto somebody else for them to read. So if you just name your variables correctly, name your functions correctly, then you don't need comments to say, oh, this variable is for a high score, or this function allows me to add hit points and take away hit points. It's simple, but it takes a bit of thought to come up with a name that actually describes a method, especially in the business. In a game, it's slightly easier because it's a little bit more obvious what's going on. But when you're trying to calculate the square root of a loan function to accumulate the total for a reservation, the names can get a bit silly. So it takes a bit of thought to come up with decent names. But then it also comes up in tests. But it's a good thing to use. I have 3 minutes left. So I'm going to go on to something a little bit different. I also want to give a little notice about the difference between university and work. The one thing I have found, well, one of the things I have found being at university versus being at work in the industry, you're encouraged at university to include as much as you can into your assignments and assessments and so on, because the tutors want to see that you've thought of things, and even though you don't achieve it, it's got errors, it's bug ridden, whatever, you've tried, you thought about it, and you'll get some bonus marks for it. When it comes to work, even as far as doing tests, you need to rein that in a lot. It's no good trying to submit a test that doesn't do the job. It's no good trying to submit a test that does the job to a point, but has a whole bundle of code that doesn't work. It doesn't shine you in the best light. It shows that you're aware of these techniques that you're trying, but it also shows that you're not able to fully implement those. So take care. Don't do it. Learn from my mistakes. But then some interviewers, some employers might find that interesting. In my particular scenarios, I haven't found it work. So try not to do it. If you can't get it to work, rip it out and get something working and submit that. And then, like I was saying before, there's a lot of times when I've found a solution to a problem, but then had to go back and clean it up, because you don't think in a linear fashion. You write code, get the solution, that's done, celebrate, go drink. No, you're meant to find a solution, write it up in a way that's understandable to you, and then rewrite it in a way that you can pass it on to somebody else and they know what you're doing. It's much better for you to pass on code that somebody else can understand than it is to pass on code that nobody understands that works. Because at least if somebody understands it, they can then continue working on it. That's how you get some. If you write it so that only you can understand it, but you leave the company, and then you have this block of code that no one knows how to navigate, and then it sits in the back end until somebody ventures in and tries to touch it. and then you break the whole application, the whole platform falls over, and someone pays money. So yeah, and I think I'm going to stop there.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
thank you ever so much, Rece. Really interesting talk. I have seen, so there's one question I'm just going to bring up. So David's basically asking, what advice would you give students taking interviews? I'm going to slightly rephrase it. What's the one bit of kind of, the one lesson you learned from going through the interview process that you wish you knew in advance, if that makes sense?
I'm going to sound a little bit big-headed when I say I don't think I went into the interview without all the knowledge I needed. However, I will say, think of it as a conversation. Like I said earlier, it's not just about what you can do for them. It's also about what they can do for you. So talk to them like it's a conversation, because at the end of the day, these are the people you're meant to be working with. So you need to know what you're going to be doing and who you're going to be working with and what's expected of you. And they're going to want to know the same thing about you. So, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really useful takeaway for everyone that's listened to the talk. So on that note, I'm going to say thanks again, Rece, for giving that talk. Thanks again to everyone that's watched that talk, and hopefully it was enjoyable. And I'll see anyone that's tuning in for our next talk on esports in 9 minutes. I'll see you in 9 minutes. Otherwise, thanks again, everyone, and we'll catch you later.
See ya.
Bye.
Stay warm.